The chances are you are here because you want to start recording your gameplay and uploading it to either TikTok or YouTube. That, or it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're fast asleep and the YouTube algorithm is really working in my favor today. But you started your recording and now you've ended up with this square format image or video which has really bad overall quality and a really low frame rate. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to firstly turn on the advanced camera settings and what settings I use to get the most out of recording on the Quest 2 without anything other than just the headset. This video is aimed a lot more towards beginners. However, there's a few tips here and there from learnings that I've had throughout my content creation journey using the Quest 2 that you might find useful. So stay tuned and you might learn something new. So let's dive right in. First and foremost, the most important, how do you get a widescreen recording off of the Quest 2? Well, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either go down the Sidequest route where you have to set yourself up as a developer on your account, and then you can plug your headset into your PC or into an Android phone and use the Sidequest app to basically change the settings of the DVR. Alternatively, you can use the Quest 2 and just the Quest 2 and do everything within the headset itself, and that's what I'm going to be showing you today. Sidequest is an awesome app, gives you a totally different game library that you can access and sideload onto your headset, but there are some limitations to the DVR which I will touch upon later in the video. Let's get into it. First things first, press your Oculus button or Meta button, I don't know if they've changed it yet. Go to the quick settings menu here or click on the green cog icon here. I'm going to do this, and what you'll be presented with is this screen, and there's a lot of boxes here and most cases you're only going to really pay attention to a couple of them. The one I want you to pay attention to today is experimental. Once you open this up, you will be given basically all the experimental features that are running on the Quest 2 currently, and the one we are interested in today is advanced camera settings. Turn that on. Now, I always recommend after making any changes to your headset in the experimental features just to reset your headset. Next, what we do is we open up the same menu and go into system, and now you'll need to go to camera. Once you're in the camera options, you should be presented with this screen. You've got sync media to Quest app, video indicator, and left eye selection. However, if you scroll down, you have a lot more available to you. You've got image stabilization, aspect ratio, frame rate, and video compression quality. So first things first, most of these settings you can just choose whether you want them or not. I don't sync to my mobile app because I have another way I get the footage off of my headset, which I will show you later on in the video. Video indicator, I have that switched on. I basically have a little red dot where my finger is right now. What that tells me is that I'm recording and I'm not just talking to air with no purpose. Next, which eye selection, that's basically where the video records from, whether it be your right eye or your left eye, and I would always suggest that you choose your dominant eye for video recording. You can very easily figure this out based on writing hand. If you're right-handed, it's most likely going to be your right eye. If you're left-handed, it's most likely going to be your left eye. There is an easy way you can figure it out, which I will show you now. So if you want to figure out what your dominant eye is, what you can do is take your controller like this, put them together, and you'll form a diamond. Pick a spot which is easily recognizable in your environment. I'm going to use the top of this mountain. If I do this and bring it in, put the tip of the mountain in the center of my diamond here, it's clear as day for me. If I close my left eye, it is still centered. If I close my right eye, it is above my left knuckles. If you want to kind of a reference what this looks like, right now this is what it would look like if it's recording based on your dominant eye, and if I switch it across to my non-dominant eye, this is how it's going to look in your recording. This only really matters if you're playing first-person shooters or any other title where you're essentially aiming down the sights. But games where you don't need to aim down anything, it's not necessarily as important, but I always suggest that you just pick your dominant eye because it's just safer in case you do decide to record first-person gameplay and you then find yourself aiming down the side of a gun. When we scroll down, the image stabilization, what this basically does is it makes the head movement smoother. But in order to do that, what it does is it adds a level of smoothing which cuts in on the image. So when you move your head left and right, you'll see these black bars appearing. If we look, we've got 4 options available to us. We've got off, low, medium, and high. Low gives you a very minimal amount of blocking, coming in from the left and right, but you can see the shakiness of your head a lot more. When you move to medium, the blockiness becomes a lot more prominent, and when you go to high, it's significantly more prominent, and you can see how much more stable the headset footage is. However, the caveat is that if you want to use this footage with this blockiness, you're going to want to crop in on the video, which in turn reduces the overall field of view. I personally don't use any stabilization because I would much rather have more of my view available, but if I was to use stabilization, I would just use low. Next, we have the most important option, which is aspect ratio. Here we have 3 aspect ratios available to us. We've got square, landscape, and portrait. Obviously, square is what the default is when you're recording without turning on the experimental features, and it's a 1024 by 1024 resolution, which is not high enough in my books. If it was 1920 by 1920, I would actually suggest using square format, because then you can actually crop in wherever you want to make the most out of the footage. But in this case, because it is only 1024 by 1024, I would not recommend using it at all. Next, we have landscape, which is 1920 by 1080. Then we have the portrait mode, which is 1080 by 1920, which is what you would be using if you're doing short format videos on YouTube or videos on TikTok. Next, we have frame rate, and whilst unfortunately we are unable to get 60 frames per second, we do have 36 and 24 frames per second available to us. 24 frames per second is the baseline frame rate that the Quest records in. I would always suggest using 36 frames per second. One, because it's a lot smoother than 24, and secondly, when you do get frame drops, you don't have as significant of a stutter in your recorded video. One thing you're going to want to bear in mind whilst recording on the Quest 2 is that you're going to want to keep your overall recordings relatively short. What I mean by that is like 10 to 15 minutes, maybe even 5 to 10 minutes, depending on your bitrate and frame rate. The reason why is that if you record for long periods of time, because the frame rate is variable, it means that if it dips down, the frame time has increased, but the audio has remained perfectly stable. And what happens over time is that the audio and the video become desynchronized. So if you record in short bursts, what that means is it minimizes the likelihood or the amount of that resynchronizing you'll have to do in post. Last and by no means least, we have video compression quality. In here, we've got 4 options available to us, and this is effectively your bit rate. You've got 5 megabits, 10 megabits, 15 megabits, and 20 megabits per second. The higher the bit rate you use, the better the quality of the video that is recorded. However, there are 2 major caveats to using a higher bitrate. Firstly, it impacts the performance of the game significantly whilst you're playing it and recording. And secondly, it also increases the file size of the video the higher up you go. Effectively, what it is it's storing more data per second of video footage, and the higher the bitrate, the higher the amount of storage required in order to save it. So 5 megabits per second being the lowest, this is the baseline megabit, and whilst it is perfectly passable if you're doing YouTube shorts, frankly it's not good enough for doing long form content. For me, I believe 10 megabits and 15 megabits per second are the sweet spot in terms of quality to file size and also gameplay performance. 20 megabits per second I never use. Whilst it does give you the best overall quality, it impacts performance so significantly that it can make games feel unplayable. So for me, I will switch between 10 and 15 interchangeably based on the type of game I'm playing. If it's slow paced, not a lot of action, I'll go 15. If it's high paced with a lot of action, I'll use 10 in order to maximize the overall performance. One way you can maximize the gameplay performance whilst recording in game is to follow this one very simple step. We go to the menu, go to system, go to display, turn off 120Hz refresh rate. Whilst this seems a bit counterintuitive, the fact is that all it does is drains battery life, increases temperature, and actually does decrease the actual quality of the gameplay whilst you're recording. And you want to be able to enjoy the game whilst you record it in order to get give the best performance to your viewers. As I mentioned before, there are two ways of actually recording in 16:9 on the Quest 2. The first way is via what I've shown you, and also you can do it via Sidequest. And while Sidequest technically offers you the ability to record at 60 frames per second, giving you that nice buttery smooth motion, the fact is that the downside of recording at that is it impacts performance significantly, and it also impacts the quality of the footage. As you can see in the example, you get a lot of color noise and a lot of blockiness in the footage, and it's just not enjoyable to watch, in my opinion. I would rather have better video quality than a faster frame rate, because ultimately for me, the quality of the image far outweighs the speed of the frame rate in terms of what people are going to enjoy watching. Next, we're just going to touch upon audio. When it comes to recording your voice, you don't need to have a super expensive headset or an external microphone in order to do that. The built-in microphone in the Quest 2 is perfectly capable of giving you high quality voice audio whilst recording. I don't know, for me it doesn't sound that bad. It has a good overall range, and it doesn't sound like something such as the Rift S, which the microphone just sounded like they took a leaf out of the black metal sound engineer's book of how to produce music. But I don't know, maybe I'm just built different, but to me it sounds fine and is perfectly adequate if you're starting out making videos for YouTube, TikTok, or whatever video sharing platform you choose. Now, one major thing that is a bit of a flaw in my books when it comes to audio recording for the Quest 2 is the fact that you can't actually change the levels of your headset audio to your microphone audio, and you also are unable to plug in an external microphone to the Quest 2 in order to make use of that. What you need to do whilst using or whilst recording and only using the headset for not only your gameplay but also your voice, you need to make sure that you enunciate everything you say. Speak with purpose and not at a low tone with very little volume, because the headset will have a hard time trying to pick up your voice. It will introduce a lot of artifacting into the audio, and it will also just make the gameplay audio significantly higher than your voice, which just is pointless. I hope one day they give us the opportunity to kind of level out how the audio works in the advanced camera settings, but currently we don't have that available to us, and you just have to work around it. Most games, however, have the ability to turn down the master volume of the game, and that does translate into the video. So if that is an option available, I would highly recommend speaking at the tone that you want to speak at and the volume you want to speak at, and record some background gameplay footage and change the master volume until you find a point of where you're happy with, or where you feel like your voice is coming through higher and clearer and much more present within the mix, and basically set it at that. However, some games don't have the ability to turn down the volume, and in some of those cases they've got music playing which is so loud and you can't get rid of it that it totally overpowers your voice entirely, no matter how loud you speak. And for those games, unfortunately, you're going to have to find an alternative way of recording your voice over that gameplay, whether that be plugging in an external headset into a PC or into a phone and recording separately, or whether you just overdub or narrate over the audio in post afterwards. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Yorick, okay, brilliant, I've now got my 1080p footage, I've got myself speaking at a level where I can hear myself over the game, but I need to get the footage off of my Quest, right? Yeah, so there's two ways you can do this, and it depends on how you want to work with your footage after it's been recorded. If you are choosing to record and then basically editing on your phone using something like Adobe Rush, sharing to your mobile device is just more preferable. So how you do that is you find your video that you're wanting to share and hit share. What will then open up is this box, and in here you can sync to mobile. This is great, obviously, if you are choosing to basically edit on your phone. However, if you want to edit on a PC, but you don't necessarily want to have to plug your headset into the PC, well, I've got a solution for you. If you go to browser and basically head to Google Drive, you can actually upload footage directly from your headset. Let's take this to Google Drive, and then you can access this footage wherever wherever you want on whatever device you want. This is how I get my footage off of my headset and onto whatever device I want to edit it on. If I choose to edit on my phone, I can just download it from the Drive app on my phone. If I choose to edit on my PC, I just download it from Drive on my PC. I've got access to this footage anywhere. That's not something that the Meta app allows you to do if you share it to your phone. So this is the quickest, most efficient way in my books of doing it, outside of plugging in a cable and pulling the footage off that way. Well, I hope that's been helpful for you. I wish you all the luck in your content creation journey, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.